and I had wrote on it just about everything I'd done after I come over here, you know, and what time I started over there driving that team of wagon over here, and I had a colt, 2-year-old colt hitched to the mother on one side, and I had an old sow and a coop of chickens and a disc car in that wagon. And well, I had a pretty good size. It wasn't heavy load, you know.
Yeah.
But I had 2 big horses pulling that, and then that colt by the side there just trotting along, you know.
Yeah.
And me and George was driving. You know George, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I walked the biggest part of the time because we left home over there on Groundhog Day. That was the 2nd day of February. And it was 10 below 0 that morning.
Gee my gosh, that was cold.
And I walked pretty near all the way.
And that was from Falmouth?
Yeah,
Falmouth?
Well, it was about 6 miles this side of Falmouth.
Yeah.
On what they called Lightfoot Fork Creek.
Yeah.
And we stopped the first night over on, if I can think of these names now, the Dixie Highway had a big hill in it that went down to Grassy Creek and then come back up on the other side.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of them hills, but that don't make any difference. That was the Dixie Highway.
Dixie Highway.
We stayed on the Dixie Highway until we got clear over to Florence.
Yeah.
And then we come across to the ferry there at Lawrenceburg.
Okay, you came clear down then across from Lawrenceburg in Kentucky and then came across then. They had a ferry at Lawrenceburg then?
Yeah, they had a ferry at Lawrenceburg.
Well, be there. I didn't know that. That's the first time I knew there was one at Aurora, but I didn't know there was one
Well, you
up
see,
there.
they didn't have none at Aurora then.
It was up at Lawrenceburg here.
1920.
Yeah.
So we pulled across the ferry there, and we came out the 3rd day. We got to Leonard's about 4 o'clock that afternoon, and of course we took the wagon and stuff over to George's place. You know, they joined farms.
Yeah.
George had bought a farm over there, and we pulled over there and got that stock all fed up, you know, and in the barn, and come back to Leonard's and stayed all night.
Yeah.
Me
Now,
and George
was
did.
that in Bright then? Was that around the Bright Indian?
Yeah, up
then?
the State Line Road.
That was up on State Line Road.
Yeah. Yeah, you ain't acquainted up there too good, I guess.
I know some of it.
Well, Leonard's farm was the 2nd farm on top of the hill. When you got to the top of the hill, Bennings lived there in that house on the left.
Yeah.
Then Leonard's house was the next house.
The next house.
But now they got about, I expect 50 houses in there now.
Yeah. Well, Hidden Valley's
Hidden Valley.
Part of his farm was Hidden Valley then, wasn't
No, that belonged to Mrs. Heck, I can't call names, but I'll think of her name.
Yeah.
But Leonard's farm was right next to that lane that goes back where, you know where the water tank is?
I know where the water tank
Well,
is.
there's a lane goes back to a house.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
now that was the line at Leonard's farm. The next farm was Leonard's farm.
I see. Yeah.
And Les and Jean lives on it now.
Yeah.
On part of that lays on the left-hand side of the road as you're going out.
Right before you get the Willis's there.
Yeah. But there's a company has bought the rest of it, and they tore all the barns and the silo and everything down on that right-hand side of the road, and they've got a golf course in there.
Yeah. I've seen the golf course
Yeah,
there.
well, that's on Leonard's place.
That was Leonard's place there? I'll be there. Yeah.
I stayed with George 2 years, and then he thought he could handle things himself with the kids, and so Leonard wanted me to stay with him the next year, and I raised 10 acres of tobacco on his place.
10 acres of tobacco. Jeez.
So when I sold the tobacco crop, and of course he had a bunch of cows too, and I bought 3 cows and kept them at George's while I was there, and I got a fourth of the milk check, and then I brought them 3 cows over to Leonard's, and still got a fourth of the milk check of all of it, you know.
Yeah.
And that kept me in gasoline money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then raised 10 acres of tobacco there, and when I cashed in, I had $500 in money.
Jeez.
And I'd been reading this ad, you know, about Sweeney Automobile place where they would train you to be a good mechanic.
Yeah.
I went out there and stayed all summer.
Huh.
And that, of course, my money was gone then when I come home.
Yeah.
And Leonard had a sale and sold everything but his farm. And he had, no, he had a tenant on that farm. That's what he had. He hadn't had the sale yet. So he was living in Aurora and tried to run a store that year, but he didn't make nothing out of it. So he was working carpenter work for the man that owned the lumber yard there, and his name was J.C. Wright.
J.C. Wright.
And
where was that at? Was that
in Aurora?
That was in Aurora. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I come back from Sweeney, I was out of money and no job, and so I went to his place first, and I said, "You reckon the old man will hire me?" I had knowed him before, you know, because he run that lumber yard there.
Yeah.
And we had bought some lumber from him, and that was at dinner time when I got to Leonard's, and Leonard was home for dinner.
Yeah.
So he says, "Get in the machine with me." He says, "I'll take you over there and we'll see what the old man says." And just quick as he saw me, "Thunder and lightning, yes, I'll hire you." He said, he was an old preacher.
Yeah, I'll be there.
He used to be an old preacher.
Yeah.
So he says, "Thunder and lightning, yes, I'll need you. Get in there and go to work." I worked clear up till Christmas day.
Yeah.
The day before Christmas I worked.
Now, what year was that? How old were you then at that
1923.
time? That was
I was 20 years old.
1923.
Yeah.
20 years old. Yeah.
That was the year I was 20 years old, and
Yeah.
Alfred was on Leonard's farm. That's who that was.
Yeah.
And he raised a big crop of tobacco, and every tobacco crop you put in that barn there, it was so tight that it would house burn. You've heard of house burnt tobacco, I haven't, ain't you?
Yeah.
Well, as that cured up, it didn't dry out quick enough, you know.
Yeah.
And it'd start growing right in the barn.
Huh.
And you'd have to open all the doors, but it's too dangerous to put fire in there because it was a feed barn, you know, and hay all over everything on the ground.
Yeah.
But it burnt the tobacco pretty bad.
Huh.
So Alfred, he wondered what he was going to do with that crop of tobacco, and I said, "That's just exactly the way mine was last year." And I says, "They bought it."
And they still bought it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I stayed with him all winter there and helped him strip that big crop of tobacco.
Jeez. Yeah.
And while we was stripping the tobacco, George, he come over one day and he says, "Ed," he says, "ain't you about ready to get married?" And I said, "Heck, what I want to get married for? I ain't got a dime."
Yeah.
Well, he said, "That don't make no difference." He said, "I'll fix it so you'll have a dime."
Yeah.
And he wanted me to get married and move into his farm and take care of that and let him carpenter all the time.
Ah, yeah.
But that's where I made my mistake.
Yeah.
If I'd have stayed out the carpenter work, that old man, he wanted me to be sure and come back and work for him in the spring. And
Yeah.
I told him, well, that was after, I was talking to him after I done found out George wanted me on his farm.
Yeah.
And of course he had them 18 cows there, and you had to do this.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't have no milker.
Yeah, morning and night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my wife never had milked a cow.
Yeah.
But she'd come out there and she'd try it.
Well, be darned. She gave it a try then, to help out.
But she got to be doing, so she could milk about 3 while I was finishing up the rest of them.
Yeah.
I'd give her the easiest ones to milk, and
Yeah.
we done pretty good. And I was there 4 years. And the first year I hired a man to stay with me. And he was a kind of an old-like feller. Well, he wasn't too old, though. I expect he was in his 30s.
Yeah.
And he stayed right with us and helped me all the time, you know.
Yeah.
And so I bid on a school route and got it.
Huh.
State line school route.
Well, I'll be darned.
And that was the first mechanism bus that went into that school. Of course, they went to every one of them routes, you know, later.
Yeah.
And I had the first bus that went in there.
We'll all be there.
And the rest of them was all driven by mules or horses.
Huh.
And
Yeah.
I bought a Ford truck from Frank McKinney down there at Lawrenceburg, and
Yeah.
and I took it up to Richmond and got a new bus body put on it. But of course, the county paid for that.
Yeah.
And I drove that school bus that year and farmed to George's farm, and then I bid again and lost it to Everett Grubbs.
I'll be there. Yeah.
Everett Grubbs, well, we tied is what happened.
Yeah.
We tied in bids.
Yeah.
And they should have given it to me because they had to take the body off of my bus and put it on his truck.
Well, they might as well just give it to you.
And I told them later after they done that, I said, I was the cheapest bidder for it. I said they had to pay you fellas for taking that body off of there and
That's
putting
right.
it on the other truck.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, but that didn't count, as your bids is what counted.
Yeah. I'll be there. You know, Kim drives a school bus.
Yeah,
now
that's
on
what I
state
heard.
line. Yeah, she
And
drives a bus.
Sam's wife's to drive it
And
too.
Sam, yeah, she drives one too.
Where does Sam's wife drive?
She drives for South Dearborn. She drives over in Aurora.
Do you see her every day?
No, I drive out for the Bright School.
Oh.
The new Bright School,
Uh-huh.
the elementary, I drive into there. I drive up state line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I think Angie goes into Aurora. I'm not sure.
Yeah, she comes into Aurora. I seen her bus sitting down there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
Boy,
you
they
know.
got a mess of buses down there at Aurora.
Oh, gosh.
Big line
yeah.
of them sitting there again the curb.
Yeah.
Alicia, you want to ask Grandpa a question?
Yeah, they took us up to what, about 19? Okay, that was
Well,
23,
that,
28.
when-
Let's see, you was about 28 then.
No, I was. Oh, you mean?
Yeah, when you had the bus route.
Yeah. Well, when I got married that next year, and I bid on that route that I was living on then, that Georgetown, or I mean the, can't think of the name of that road down there, Bond Road.
Bond, okay.
Yeah,
I know
that
where
was
Bond's
right
at.
this side of Bright.
Yeah.
You turn down toward, well, right on the Ohio line. I'd
Yeah.
cross the Ohio line twice every morning and
Oh,
go
big
back
time.
in them lanes.
Yeah.
And I bid on that and got it, and I run that route that year.
Yeah.
And I was already running the milk route then.
Yeah.
I started the milk route the next year after I lost that state line route.
Yeah.
And I hired a man to stay with me, and, well, just a boy. He was 18 years old, but he caused me a little trouble.
Yeah.
He didn't buy his license. I thought he had license. I told him, I said, Sam, you're going to have license to drive it. And he said, okay, I'll get them.
Yeah.
And by golly, he didn't.
Oh.
He had a wreck.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Well, as soon as I had heard what he'd done, he called me up from the jail. They had him in jail.
Oh, yeah.
So I took his cousin and took him down there. He knew all about Sam, and
Yeah.
took him down and got his license out of at Lawrenceburg, and took him up there and pinned that number on his cap right while he was in jail.
Huh.
He was going to go to trial that night.
Oh, yeah.
So I was there when he had the trial, and it so happened that that old man was the cause of his wreck.
Okay.
He pulled out of a side road in front of him and
Yeah.
hit the truck, but it didn't hurt the truck any, but it did mash his car all to pieces. He had one of those old-time Model Ts.
Yeah. Big old
And,
truck.
That cop said that when he was investigating, he said he pretty near had to laugh. He said them old people was a peddling cottage cheese, and they just had that smeared all over them, and the car was full of cottage cheese. But the insurance man was there with me, and it didn't cost me nothing because
Yeah.
Sam, he didn't. What caused him to look for Sam? He was afraid they'd check him without license, you know, and he just pulled off and left him
Oh,
after
okay.
he got found out they wasn't hurt,
Yeah.
and left the old man, the old lady sit there and
Yeah.
didn't try to help him at all.
Yeah.
So he pulled away from him,
Yeah.
and I don't know how they come to get him, but they didn't get him until he got his load off and was back down to Cleves again.
Yeah.
And they found him down there. He was taking that hind wheel off the hit, and was going to put another wheel on in that place, and
Yeah.
so they didn't. But they come down there and they saw him doing that.
They figured it out.
They figured it out that he was the one that
Yeah.
was in the accident and took it.
Was the courthouse still in the same spot as it is today?
Where you mean, up at Cincinnati?
In Lawrenceburg.
Oh yeah.
Was that where the wreck was at? Was in Lawrenceburg, or was he
No,
up in
it was up
Cincinnati?
on. You know where Cleves and Warsaw is?
Oh yeah.
Well,
yeah.
it was up on that road just as you get to the top of the hill. There's another road comes out, and that old man come right out into him.
Yep, I know where you're at there. Yeah.
Yeah, he was hauling to Kroger then,
Yeah.
and then they changed my route to another place, and I didn't like it too well that they changed it because Kroger was the best place to sell milk.
That was the best place to
You
sell.
betcha.
Yeah.
They give you the right test and also give you the right weight.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah.
But them other dairies, they didn't. They'd mess up on your weight and also your test.
Yeah. Huh.
Then I sold my milk route. I run that 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sold my milk route to Keith Hart,
Yeah.
and I expect he run it about 10 years.
You picked up other people's milk too, then.
Well, I
on
picked
the
up
way.
that from the farmers, you know, and
Yeah.
took it into Kroger's.
And that was in probably the old milk cans, then, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, 10 gallons.
10-gallon cans.
Yeah, and then when Keith got enough of it, he sold it to Sammy Schinkel, and Sammy used to work for me. He drove 2 years for me,
Yeah.
and he wanted to buy it, but he didn't have no money.
Huh.
And Keith got the money right away, and
Yeah.
I told him, I said, I'd have to have it all, and he went and got it for me.
Well, right about that time, didn't the flood hit sometime around there?
Yeah, while we was hauling milk, that 37 flood was.
That was the 37 flood.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I kept thinking it was in 32, but it was 37.
No, it's 37.
It's 37. And they didn't have a levee or anything in Lawrenceburg then, did
Well,
they?
it was a small levee. You see, that one time they had a pretty hard. Well, it got into Lawrenceburg all the time, just with a small flood.
Yeah.
And then they built that clear up to the top of that 37 flood, and it hasn't got in there yet since
No, it
that.
hadn't got in. Yeah. But the courthouse and all that, it was always right there?
Oh yeah.
It's always been the
Yeah,
same
it had that
spot.
courthouse almost covered up,
Gee,
water.
No kidding.
And I bought a house there on Front Street after I sold my farm up there on Bel Air, and when I done that, I got a picture of that house, and all that was sticking out was the roof.
Oh, be done. Jeez. You still have that picture, do you? Somewhere you have
Yeah,
it,
it's
or-
somewhere, I don't know where, but I got
Yeah.
a whole mess of them books down there, you know.
I'll bet that was an awesome sight, though.
It sure
all,
was.
all that water. It's
But
never.
what I done there, I couldn't rent a house. I sold my farm, and I thought, I knew that I was going to buy another farm, you know, but I wanted to look a while, so
Yeah.
I couldn't rent nothing. Doggone, everything was full, and they had a house there on Front Street in Lawrenceburg, and for $8,000. So I bought it, and just as quick as we got the papers for me to own it, why, I filled out another set of papers so I could sell it again.
Well, I'll be darned.
I said, I don't want to
Yeah.
be down here in another flood.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So-
that had you thinking then about the flood.
So Elmo graduated that year,
Yeah.
and she was in Lawrenceburg School, you know. She's the
Yeah.
only one that graduated. Well, I guess
Yeah, my mom did too.
guess
And-
Gerald,
Yeah.
yeah, Gerald
Mom.
did graduate down there.
Yeah, Mom graduated from Lawrenceburg.
Morse Hill.
She graduated from Morse Hill. That's right. But she has a Lawrenceburg ring. She
Yeah,
must have got that ring.
She went to Lawrenceburg School, and also when we moved to Moores Hill, then, well, she graduated out at
She-
Moores Hill.
Okay, they're at Carnegie then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I bought that farm out there on Bloom Road then,
That
and
was when you bought there.
we moved out there before the boys come home from service.
Yeah.
And Gerald, he come into Lawrenceburg there from the service, and he didn't know where he lived.
Yeah. Had the hunches up then.
So he called Alfred up, and
Yeah.
Alfred lived there in Greendale then.
Yeah.
And Alfred says, where you at, Gerald? And he told him, he said, well, you just stay right there, I'll be down.
I'll be there.
So he went and got him and took him out to where we lived.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said to Alfred, he says, do you know where I live?
Shoot, let's go to Alfred to come over and pick him up then. Take him out. That's a good drive out 350 there. Yeah, you was there at that farm for quite a while then, wasn't you? There on Bloom Road.
Yes, I lived there about 10 years, and then I turned the farm over to Clayton.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I wasn't there quite 10 years, maybe about 9. And then I turned it over to Clayton, and well, he farmed for me, and we all lived in the same house. And I think Mike was about 3 or 4 years old. I remember Mike was standing behind Bob's car, and he didn't know it, and Bob run over him.
I heard that story. Yeah, knocked him over.
And he said he didn't know it. He wasn't completely what he done, because when he got to the see, that was a pretty long drive in there.
Yeah.
And when he got to the road, he looked toward the house and said Mike was just getting up, and he saw him a-crying right in the middle of the road where he come out.
Yeah.
So he run in there to see if he was hurt bad, but he wasn't.
Well, that was a close call.
He must have been right in the middle of the car, and it pushed him down and slid right over him. Never hurt him a bit.
Oh, that was a close call. Mike's had so many close calls, hasn't he?
He shot his nose off.
Yeah, shot his nose off. Remember, he rolled a tractor over, too, one time.
That's right.
And that could have got him just easy as not. Yeah.
But I lived in Moores Hill then about 10 years.
Yeah.
And till I retired, and then I seen I was gonna retire, and the went down there that fall. I said, I'm going to buy a house. Oh, no, don't do that. He says, I'm here by myself. And he says, you and Louise stay right here with me.
Huh, yeah.
So I never said nothing right then, but because I told him later on after he mentioned it again, and I said, well, now listen. I said, I come down here to have a good time, and I says, I am going to work.
Yeah.
If I can get work.
Yeah.
And I says, if I stayed here with you, you'd wanted me to do just exactly what you wanted me to do. Yeah. And I says, if I got a house of my own, I can do as I please.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I don't know how he took it, but he says, well, I guess you're right.
You got a point there. Yeah.
So I looked for a house there, I expect for 2 or 3 weeks, and I found one that was already had furniture and everything in it.
Yeah.
So I bought it, and it was right in a good place too. It was on right the other side of that big street that goes clear through town to the east and west.
Yeah.
On 90.
On Route 90 there. I remember that house.
Hillsboro.
That was a nice house there. Yeah.
Well, when you get down on 75 to Hillsboro, you turn off on Hillsboro, and that was Central then.
Yeah.
Just about halfway between Dillsboro, or Central, and the next street up was Nebraska. And you turn off there, and just a little bit, there's a light there, and you turn up Central Avenue, and it was the third house.
I remember it was real easy to get to off 75.
You was there, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
place.
by golly, you was there.
I remember it. Was there an orange tree or something in the front?
Yeah.
House? Cause
I think I got some pictures in front.
An awful lot of trees around there. They called them the live oaks down there, and they never did shed their leaves.
Huh. They stayed on all
They stayed on all winter.
Oh, be darn. Yeah. I remember they had a nice front porch on it.
Oh, yeah.
Brick.
Well, I fixed that. I painted that house all up, and I lived in it 9 years, 9 winters.
Yeah.
And I sold it to a lady, and she didn't have but $10,000.
Yeah.
So I told her, I said, well, she wasn't married then. She was between husbands. Yeah. Hello, hi there.
Deal with Dearborn County, don't we?
Yeah. Go ahead, Alicia.
That was one of her.
Oh, how you doing?
Well,
So go ahead.
How many years did you live in Dearborn County?
Huh?
How many years did you live in Dearborn County?
Well, I've lived here since 1920. How many years would that be?
Well, there was 9 years of it he moved
Moved to Florida, yeah.
That you could.
Why don't you get on this
No,
side
I
of
lived
him?
up here in the summertime.
Oh,
You
that's
wanna
right, so
come
you
over
did.
here and get on
That
this
was,
side of him
yeah.
so
I'll
that
tell
he
you
can
what
hear
I done
you.
after I got
You're
down there
out
and bought that house. I found out if your
enough that you can talk
woman
to
at
him.
the place that sold the farm,
Oh, it caught
side of it,
Yeah,
and it looked like a house. It didn't look like a trailer,
yeah.
and she was back in there asleep, I guess, and somebody pulled in there in the car and found her asleep, and the fire was between him and her, and he couldn't get in and she couldn't get out, and them windows was awful little.
Oh, yeah.
And he said he just busted the heck out of that end there and got her out of there,
Yeah. She
and
she
then
had
the
a
trailer
close
burned
call.
up.
Oh, be there. Yeah.
Okay, here comes another question.
What were the schools like? What were the schools like?
The school, I didn't go to school after I come over here. I was 17 years old and out of grade school, and that's as far as I went in grade school. I didn't go to high school because they didn't have no high school within 10 miles of where I lived. And
Can you describe to her what kind of schools there was over here?
well, I don't know whether I could or not because I didn't go to school over here, you see.
Yeah.
But I did run a school route into Bright. I had the first school bus on a truck. They run even mules to drive school kids to that state line route. Before I run it, the Tot Blazel run it with 2. Well, I stayed with George 2 years, then a year with Leonard, and then that next year I went to Kansas City to that school, and when I come back I stayed with Leonard again till Christmas time, worked carpenter work with Leonard, and then when I got back to Alfred was renting Leonard's farm, and I had a great big crop of tobacco, and I stayed with him all winter.
Okay.
So when I got back to Alfred's place, Alfred had a big crop of tobacco to strip, and I helped him strip that and stayed with him all winter.
Okay, what's your next question, Alicia?
Were the stores different from now?
Was it what?
Were the stores a lot different?
Oh yeah, it was a whole lot different. I wouldn't know what to tell you about what did change, but I know I changed. I got married.
Yeah.
George come over there when we was stripping tobacco. You know where the farms joined. You was born back in that. No, you was born in Leonard's house. Leonard's and George's farm joined, and I was with George 2 years, and Leonard, he wanted me to raise 10 acres of tobacco then, so I went up there over with him and done that, and then the next year I was in Kansas City, Missouri, and Leonard had rented the farm to Alfred and moved to Aurora and was running a store down there, and he found out he was going to lose money on the store, so he sold it out and started working carpenter work for that old man Wright that run the lumber yard. And I come to his place, and he took me over there and got me a job with him, with the same man that he worked for, and I worked there clear up to Christmas time. The day before Christmas, we finished up putting wallboard on, and they closed up the house then until after the weather got better next spring. And he wanted me to come back, but I told him, I said, well, I've done decided to get married. So I got married and took George's farm over and run it 4 years. And while I was there, I run a school bus 1 year, and then I started the milk truck the next year and run it 10 years. I've done a whole lot.
Okay, now
Boy,
she's got
I
another
reckon.
question.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Was Seagram's here?
Huh?
Was Seagram's here?
No, Seagram's wasn't here then. You see, Bank Hall